Hey everybody, welcome to the Everything Paranormal Show. I'm your host, Josh Morse, and joining me tonight live is going to be Bob Fountain from Spectral Tech. How you doing, Bob? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing fine.
Good. Awesome. Well, just for some of the folks out there that may not be familiar with yourself, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I was born in 1947 in Toledo, Ohio, so I've had a lot of time to observe the world around me. Over the years, I've been in the U.S. Navy, helped build late model stock cars, managed bar bands, earned 2 college degrees, and co-founded a nonprofit disaster response organization, as well as co-founded Spectral Tech. On the professional side, I worked for a chemical manufacturer. I spent the last 25 years doing primarily process engineering related work. And over those years, and after seeing the UFO on my radar screen and visually while in the Navy, I became an avid reader of a wide range of paranormal topics.
Wow.
And viewed them from a process engineering point of view.
Now, I'm quite familiar with Toledo, Ohio. I'm quite familiar with Toledo, Ohio myself. I actually grew up in Monroe, Michigan, just across the border. So I'm sure you're quite familiar with that, right there north of Toledo.
Oh yeah, I got several relatives that live in Monroe, Michigan.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so we're really from the same neck of the woods. That's pretty crazy. So you witnessed the UFO in the day, and that kind of got you started. So how long have you been involved in paranormal research?
Well, it took years of different experiences before, something just hit the tipping point where all of a sudden it got in my radar range, so to speak. When I was 11 years old, we lived in a house that had a residual spirit that no one believed I was seeing and hearing. At 22, I lived in another house with a residual and active haunting. 25, I attended a spiritualist church with a Wiccan girlfriend, and that kind of opened my eyes to stuff was out there. But still, it was just nice to know information.
Right.
But it got to the point where once things were happening, that's all of a sudden it decided this is really what I need to be looking at.
Well, yeah, that's for me, it's been off and on over the last 24 years, and I did notice that you also mentioned to me that because I met you at the Outer Realm Festival, and it was pretty interesting. It was their first annual festival, so I thought it went pretty well.
Yeah.
For those folks out there, East Valley Paranormal, and it was really a good chance that you and I got to talk and meet as well. And you had also mentioned that you were an ordained metaphysical minister. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I kind of worked into that like the same way I worked into getting into the paranormal. One of the things I've noticed over the years, there's kind of a void out there in the standard religions, Christianity and especially, where they don't talk about it.
Right.
You go to church, the soul's eternal, you live on. There's a Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. But when it comes to paranormal occurrences, it's just dead silent. And that's why there's a lot of investigators out there, because this stuff happens to them. And the church is no place it's not a crutch for them because it's just not talked about.
Right.
It's like having, the bad uncle or aunt somewhere. So
I
got more involved with that. I said, we had to look at the spiritual end of this.
Well, absolutely. And I completely 100% agree with you. It's one of the things I've brought up in some of my other shows in the past, that void that the church normally should be able to fill. But again, there's a whole study done, and again, there's some paper in the Oxford University files about the direct reflection of people that left the church in seek of paranormal answers. That they didn't stop believing in God. They just weren't not getting the answers in necessarily a brick and mortar church. So they started seeking, the television shows and things like that as a form of answer, or of course other, paranormal investigators as well. So I completely understand. It's something I've definitely been talking about quite a bit, and I'm glad to see that you've also taken up that fight as well, to give answers to people, and that's really good. I really appreciate that. Also, I noticed too that you mentioned to me that you've co-hosted Paranormal Underground Radio a few times, and also have been a contributor to the Paranormal Underground magazine. What's that been like for you?
Well, that started out with, as I was learning more and more and getting more involved with the paranormal, I came across that magazine, and one time they missed an issue, so I contacted the executive editor, which is Cheryl Knight, and she said, do you have any things we could write about? And, you know, I always wrote technical manuals for process engineering type work.
Nice.
So converting from technical manuals to narratives, it was a stretch at first, but they kept on wanting articles, and I kept on sending them. In fact, you can read most of them on my website.
Nice.
But in fact, we actually went on a paranormal investigation together up at Bobby Mackey's. I'm sure you're familiar with that place.
Yeah. Now, just to also take a moment here to acknowledge some of the people in our chat. I see we had Debbie Fountain. She was asking if anybody was home, probably because we were delayed. We had a little bit of a delay, a few technical issues. That's what happens when you have a live show. And I've got a new rig, folks. I don't know if you can tell. I've got a new camera tonight. It's hopefully a little more higher definition than the last camera I had. So I don't know if y'all can notice the difference on that. Also, William Bennett popped in there. I see you see me. She's a veteran of our chat. And my wife, Terry Lynn, she says, hi there, Mr. Fountain. Truly enjoyed meeting you at the event, because obviously you met my wife when you were there and got to talk with her. So.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah,
I was talking to a lot of people while I was there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
I was doing it for the possibility of another article.
Yeah, it was. I was
going to look at an article about.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that few second time delay messes you up every time, doesn't it?
Yeah, that little bit of delay. It's like
people about.
It's like, because in when you're trying to do a show, you don't want to have any kind of like major dead air, right? So, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, no.
But yeah, go ahead and talk about the event. That was.
Anyway, when we was at the event, one of the things I was looking at is, why are all these people coming to an event like that? Was it based on because they thought it would be cool because it's the way the TV shows are, or were they looking for spiritual guidance, or were they just curious about the equipment we used and, you know, if we're totally out of our minds?
Yeah.
So I canvassed a lot of people, so I got enough for at least another article. Sometimes you run out of investigations and you got to write about just something that comes out of past experience.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that through meeting you is that you actually turned me on to Paranormal Underground magazine. So not to give them, I guess, well, we'll just go ahead and give them a shout out. But yeah, folks, I mean, Paranormal Underground magazine, it's great. Right now, it's just is it just digital, right? It's not paper. It's just digital right now, right?
No, it's. Yeah, they send it to you digitally through email as a PDF file.
Right.
The magazine runs anywhere from 50 to 67 pages.
Right.
So it's a good size, but you can get hard copy print. I'm getting hard copies every time I have an article in it.
Right.
So when I get old and feeble and senile, the grandson can see at least at one point I knew what the hell I was doing. Oh, can't say hell on webcasting.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can say whatever you want to say. Trust me. I don't generally cuss a lot on my stuff, but trust me, if we get onto some heated subjects, who knows, right? But it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I was in the Navy. I'm used to swearing.
Oh yeah, and I was Air Force, and believe me, I worked on the flight line. I wasn't an officer. I was in the trenches. So believe me, when you bang your head on the aircraft, you didn't just say "oh poopy." So yep. I know what you mean. But yeah, I mean. So, yeah, we're talking about the magazine, and that's what I want people to understand, that if you haven't checked it out, you need to check out that magazine. I got my first issue, and I got to say, it's pretty cool. I was really impressed. It's legit, folks. And so you need to check it out. Paranormal Underground Magazine. And I guess you can even get a hard copy if you want. But even just digitally, the PDF came through perfect. It was great. So just letting you know, folks. Okay, so Bob, so when did you tell us a little bit about the history of when you decided to open up or start Spectral Tech.
Well, that happened when I was I was the executive director of this disaster response organization, and we arranged to lease an abandoned schoolhouse for 10 years for $1, which is pretty sweet. But all we had to do was renovate the building so the community could use it after we moved out. Well, the first time I went in that building, I could sense something was in there with us, because I could feel it walking around behind us pretty much. And one night I had the chance to sleep there by myself with all the doors locked, and this is in one of these old-time schoolhouses, U-shaped, with an auditorium upstairs and downstairs.
Right.
Hearing footsteps going down the hallway, having something knock window curtains off the wall and hitting me in the bed, stopping my watch for me when the doors were locked. That kind of piqued my interest. And then there was one of the people I was telling that to in our organization. He was a tech guy. He was also a paranormal investigator. So he asked if his team could come investigate. And what I did is I said, sure, as long as I get to come with you. So they went and did an investigation, and they found out, yeah, this place basically is haunted. And they asked me, because I do a lot of tech stuff myself, what happened is when I listen to something, I log everything on spreadsheets, so I got times and dates and when occurrences happen. And I capture all the EVPs, I put out little clips, pass it on to everybody else. I do it like a process engineering project.
Right.
Well, they like that, so they wanted me to join the team. Come to find out that that's all they wanted me to do, is to spend all the hours reviewing if you've ever been involved with that, all the hours it takes to review the tapes and the EVPs and the video.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's all they wanted me to do. They didn't want me to go out in the investigations. And I found out, later that, that was because I was too old to look good on television.
Oh, geez.
Therefore.
Oh, goodness.
I still like to do the data analysis, but they were in it for the wrong reasons.
Oh, yeah.
That they would die because someday someone would discover them. And I got the heck out of there as quick as I could.
Oh, yeah. Well, and, we had a team, and, and I remember the countless hours of because people, sometimes they forget that, for every piece of equipment that you have during an investigation, you do a 4-hour investigation or 2-hour, even a 2-hour investigation or something, but you do like a 4-hour investigation with, 5 or 6 pieces of equipment, we're talking 20 hours of footage. People forget that you got to actually spend that time re-listening to all those devices. Now, if you have a team and you can split it up, obviously, but even then, a lot of times, there's only a few people that are actually reviewing that evidence, because they're usually the ones that can do good at it and capture things. So that's something that people tend to forget about, is how much actual time that can be sucked out of your life going over the evidence. So yeah, if you're stuck there doing that, it's not always fun, especially when you hear the same things over and over. But yeah, so now, right now, are you guys are currently active? Do you guys do quite a few residential? Do you do the commercial stuff? What kind of mixture do you have right now for your investigations?
Right now it's about 50-50. Okay. I did a beauty shop in a small town, and I got to be careful when I do these investigations, because I'll tell the people up front, I write articles for a magazine, and that can cause you some problems. You got to know how much they want to be known. So I might be as vague as it was in the southeastern United States, or as I have to know what they're willing to let me talk about so I don't get sued later on. We had one case of a friend of ours in Memphis that he gave the guy's name. Come to find out, his boss was some fundamental Christian who fired him on the spot because he was dealing with demons.
Right.
His kid got bullied and beat up at school. And so I said, no, you got to be real careful about that. So I keep it pretty much vague. A lot of the people, they're flattered that they're going to be in a magazine, and I always give them a copy of the article as it's published in the magazine. And they enjoy that, but there's other people don't want anybody to know that something like that happened, like it's their fault.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that is always something that, we always had to be careful when discussing our cases. We had to use a lot of generic terms. And even when I released my book, when I wrote my book and released that, I had to use fictional names and things like that. Just, again, I didn't want to get anybody in trouble, disclose anything, because you're right. Sometimes people get very sensitive about, because there's a religious take involved. And like you said, sometimes when people don't understand things, they're very religious, they can outcast people and shun people. And that's unfortunately part of that whole church problem, where you had members in the congregation that would find out you're dealing with something paranormal. People would get shunned out of their own church or just made to feel like they didn't belong there. And so again, I think that's all part of that.
Yeah. Of course, there's not all churches are like that. The Catholics, obviously, they've known about that for years and have rituals. We had to use a Catholic priest in one of our clients' houses where they had ghosts who were just quite content to coexist with them.
Right.
And something dark came in. It happened to light up all of our EVPs, and we asked if it was a demon. And people started getting nauseated, getting touched inappropriately, and we knew that wasn't one of the regulars.
Right.
So they had to have a priest come in and clear it out of the house. And then they said, well, can you come back? And I said, you don't need me coming back there. It's clean. Leave it alone. But
yeah, I mean, and
we've had a Mormon. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say one of the things that you were talking about that I had noticed that you like to discuss was why entities. Because you were talking about people coexisting with ghosts and having something, bad come in there. But one of the things that you like to dive into is why entities like to communicate with us or interact with us. So if you'd like to expand on that, the floor is yours.
Well, that's part of that. That's part of that metaphysical ministry. Like I said, there's a lot of voids out there. The Mormons, they're more than glad to come in and bless a house. They're not too excited about trying to exercise one, but we've had to use them a couple times. But what we found out a lot of times, even though the client's scared, out of their wits because something's happening, and that's basically because they have no knowledge of the whole inner workings of the paranormal. Of course, none of us do, but we know more than most.
Right.
But sometimes it's not the living client that has the issue. It's the spirit. I can't tell you how many times I've got on EVPs, help me or help us, and it just seemed wrong to walk away. It might be entertaining for people in the physical realm to find evidence that verifies that, yeah, there's something out there. But when something's screaming for help and you just turn around and walk away saying you got what you got, and the heck with them, that's just not right. Now, sometimes we have to be the go-between to talk.
Now, I was always presented with this question from a friend of mine who's a minister in he's a Baptist minister, and he likes to ask this question a lot. So I want to throw it your way, but I guess he always asks the ghost hunters, how do you know the difference between, how do you know it's not an evil spirit versus a regular spirit? How do you actually know the difference? So if you get a spirit communicating on an EVP saying "help me" or something, how do you really know it's a human spirit versus an evil spirit or something? I'll let you answer that.
Easy question. You don't.
Yeah.
One of we have a highway patrolman in our group, and we was at a place in Behringer, Mississippi, and there's a little girl there. Of course, we verified this little girl drowned in 1880, so she's a real spirit, and one of the current spirits in there, when he was alive, he used to see her floating in the stairway. So we knew that was okay, but he started asking, do you want to be my friend? I'll be your friend. And I immediately stopped him and said, no, you don't want to be friends with something. And I said, there's two things you don't say. You can be my friend, or you can use my energy. Both of those are no-nos, at least as far as my group's concerned.
Yeah.
Because you might be going home with something you really don't want.
Well, and
that's one of the things that I teach in classes.
Well, I was gonna say that's definitely something that I've noticed too, is that, you know, some of the difference between seasoned investigators and amateur investigators, or just people dabbling, is that they don't always realize that a lot of these evil spirits, which there is plenty out there, will try and use people. There's so many methods, and they can easily manipulate people and trick them into believing, you know, that they could be a relative or a friendly ghost. So, but anyway, sorry to interrupt you on that one.
Oh yeah, one of the things that I tell my group, we don't do group prayers, because there's different religious denominations in our group. So I say, pray to your whatever God you believe in to protect you. I usually wear crystals for protection, but we do a prayer before we go in. We do a prayer before we leave, and then when I get home, I sage all my equipment.
Right.
To make sure nothing comes home with me. I got enough animals here. Don't need anything that I can't see.
Yeah, and for me, you know, and even my wife, you know, we are Christian based. You know, a lot of people always wonder, like, hey, how does that work? And again, it's hard for me to get into that with explaining it. That's why I wrote a book about it. But I still believe, yes, you can be of Christian faith, you can still ghost hunt, you can still do some of these things. Yeah, there's things in the Bible that's gonna, you know, go against that, with like Deuteronomy and things like that. But ultimately, you know, we each have our faith, and like you said, you know, we have to stay to that faith, and those things work. I still even use crystals as protection as well. So I get love from both sides. I get love from the Christians and the pagans. It's great. I'm in like in the middle.
He is a metaphysical minister. We don't abide by any particular dogma. All we worry about is the soul. So, I mean, if you want to eat meat on Friday, have at it. If it's pork, have at it. But we found out a lot of times, what we found in investigations, is some of the spirits are afraid to cross over because they're afraid of being judged. You know, if they're brought up their entire life being taught that certain things that they've done all their life is going to send them to hell, when all of a sudden they see their dead material body laying there, they feel that draw to go back to the Creator. They know what's going to happen because that's what they were told all their lives. They say time out because God gave every soul free will. So they get stuck in between worlds until you can convince them God's a loving God and He will forgive them. They're their own judge. So yeah, we've run into that problem. But metaphysically, all we deal with is just soul. Why is it here? Why is people coming in and out of our lives? Where are we going when we're done? Heck, that's enough to keep us busy. That way I don't have to keep track of whether I can eat meat on Friday or if it has to be pork.
Right. You know, William Bennett in the chat says it all comes to giving authority and what power that gives. So that's his comment. And BRS Media showed up saying that he's a little late. Yes, you're a little late there, Rich. All right. that's okay. We'll forgive him. He only missed my last two shows, so, you know, that's cool.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm wearing my sarcasm. It's what I do best shirt. That's me.
There you go. I was accused of that all my life.
Right?
But, yeah, we tell people during investigations, what we try to do more than anything else is not come in and be their savior or their guide. We tell them what they can do to take control of the situation themselves. Most of them don't realize you can tell a spirit there's ground rules. Most of the time, the ground rules are abided by.
Right.
And we've had several investigations that we avoided by just telling the people what they need to do first before we pack up all the equipment and spend the hundreds of hours reviewing tapes. We just tell them what they can do, and that solves the problem very, very often.
Yeah, and
have you run into the same?
Well, and I think that one of my biggest pet peeves, and we can tap into this subject because I know this is something as well with you. One of my big pet peeves, because our team was out in existence in our prime back when the reality shows in the early 2000s, 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so forth. But when the first few reality shows was into their prime, their first few seasons, again, the paranormal world, so many people were looking at the shows as what set the bar for investigations, what set the bar for all this stuff, and people didn't realize. But there's a certain integrity to helping people. The shows, a lot of times, there's a lot of them that are going in, they're stirring up the nest and leaving. Some of them try to help, they do a few things. But one of my biggest pet peeves is helping people. If you're going to take on residential cases, help people. Give them those advices. Give them those things that's going to help do the guidelines or help them. That's the whole point of it for me, is helping people. So it drives me crazy when teams take on residential cases and they just go there and they thrill seek for their own purposes, so they can get their YouTube content or whatever the case is, or they can just satisfy their own lust for chasing the afterlife. Meanwhile, there's still innocent victims that needed help and they were terrorized.
Yeah, that's one of the things we tell some of our clients. If you're basing your fears on what you see on television, you're mistaken. I mean, there's stuff out there that isn't human. There's stuff out there that can hurt you, but it's very rare. It's far and few between. And some of these shows, actually, I think some of the shows, the producers have put the shows on to make fun of the paranormal to begin with. I'm sure you know the same shows I know. We're both talking about the same shows. We just can't name names,
right?
So we don't have lawyers knocking on. And some shows out there, they're so idiotic that everybody stereotypes anybody doing this is morons.
Right.
And I think there's an agenda behind there. In fact, there's several other people I've talked to in the paranormal field that believes that.
Oh yeah, there's definitely an agenda, and I realized, like my wife and I realized very early on when we started doing preliminary cases for a certain TV show. One of the most popular shows that kind of started it all back then, I don't want to name any names, we did some preliminary investigations for them, and so that was cool and everything. But then when we started following up with some of the ones that they had televised, and we started going to some of those locations, that's why to this day you find all of these locations that are charging investigation teams hundreds of dollars to investigate these places now. So a lot of that agenda started back then with the TV shows that boomed a whole nother industry to the paranormal.
I want to tell you something. There's a place called Woodard Fontaine House in Memphis. There was all kinds of rumors it was haunted. Our team that was there before, the original team I was with, we got enough data and verification that it was indeed haunted. In fact, I got a picture on my website showing a spirit there interacting with some of my equipment. But we decided to go back and do a follow-up after one of the well-known TV shows that started was there. And they said, well, it'll be $100 a piece. We're the ones that verified enough that they were haunted to begin with, and they turned around and wanted to charge us to go back and do it a second time. Couldn't believe it. Needless to say, I didn't go back. But then there's what I call the big box stores, places like Waverly Hills or Bobby Mackey's, where there's no doubt they're haunted. It's there, but it's kind of like people are kind of like these rescue dogs. That after they find so many dead bodies, they gotta send them over to get a fake person that's alive out of the rubble. I think they for paranormal investigators, the same thing. After you go to 5 or 6 investigations and you don't get anything, you go to Woodfontaine or you go to Waverly Hills, where you all of a sudden you get some action again. It kind of revitalizes you.
Right. Now, you know, and here's the thing. I've been to some of those places. I've been to some of those places where they were on TV or whatnot, and I gotta say, I was pretty disappointed. Now, I know paranormal doesn't work on cue. Like, I understand that, but still, I'm not fully convinced that they're as active as they really claim to be half the time. I think a lot of it. Now, I do know there's people that's going to go through they're going to stir up the pot, and so I get that just in the nature alone, there's going to be a certain amount of paranormal activity, I'm sure. But I'm just not fully convinced it's as up to that level as maybe some of these businesses claim. Is that something in your experience that you also would agree with?
Well, yeah, and sometimes when you go there for the first time, especially in residential situations, when you go the first time, you might get nothing, because basically you're a total stranger coming to what a spirit considers its dwelling, and it'll go run and hide. You have to be there 2-3 times sometimes before they say, "Hey, you're back, how you doing?" And then all of a sudden you get the communication going. There's been other cases where we've been on where as soon as we walked in the door, stuff started happening, trying to drive us out of the place. One of the things that's on my website, I got a lot of EVPs on my website. In fact, that's where I was doing most of the time at Outer Realm, was letting people listen to EVPs.
That's always cool.
One where there's one that the entity there trying to run us off right away did everything it could to scare us. And we don't scare easy, most of us at least. Sometimes you see on TV guys screaming like a little girl running out. They shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
There's risk there, but you know, we got God watching our back, so we shouldn't be scared.
Yeah,
if we die, we know there's an afterlife.
There's definitely some drama involved in the shows, that's for sure. Just to kind of look at the chat here, we got a lot of chat activity. I know William Bennett, I didn't want to ignore your comment earlier. He was talking about the giving authority part, and he also commented saying that giving authority to drive your car to a stranger is giving them the power to drive it, even if they are a poor driver. Given a random spirit authority over you is the same concept. So yeah, they don't necessarily have to be a good driver. Obviously, if you let a spirit drive you. But yeah, then there's some chat on here about the shows that they were laughing at, about making fun of one of the guys from the show. Let's just put it that way. One of the paranormal shows, they were making fun of him in the chat. Have you somebody wanted to ask you? My wife actually wanted to ask you. Have you ever been to the Winchester House?
Too far to drive, and I don't get in airplanes. I've been on 3 airplanes that almost crashed. I'm not getting on another one.
Goodness, yeah, I would say if you've been on 3 airplanes that's almost crashed, yeah, I don't blame you. I would probably stick to driving.
Visualize dropping about 3 feet with the plane sideways.
Oh goodness,
That's tough to convince you not to do that again.
I mean, I've flown quite a bit, I have, and I haven't had really bad experiences, but I don't necessarily like it, but I don't hate it yet. So if I have to, I'll fly, but I do prefer to drive. That's me. So okay, so yeah, and that kind of covers. There's a lot of chat, but not anything direct for us. Just a lot of chat between them talking about things. My wife announced too in the chat that we are closing on a house tomorrow, so we're excited about that. So there's like a million things going on in our personal life on that. When closing on a house and all that good stuff. So
pick up all your sage now.
Right. Well, when we walked through it, and that's funny because every time when we were shopping for houses, we were walking through and sort of feeling it out. We had some older houses, and I picked up some attachment for a while there, and that was kind of a crazy story I talked about on another episode. But But yeah, so this house so far, I don't think we really picked up anything. But again, we're like beacons of light to spirits, especially my wife. They're drawn to us, and they like to use us for communication or help or whatever. So who knows? We'll have to see how the paranormal side. In fact, hopefully the next broadcast we do will be from the new house.
That's neat.
Oh yeah, so we're super excited. All right, so Bob, what is some of your favorite? Like, what would be your favorite form of capturing evidence? Okay, out of like, maybe thermal imaging or something, or spectral cameras, or EVP, spirit boxes, anything like that. What's your favorite?
Right now, I have an SLS camera that I've had for about 4 investigations. That's a pretty sweet deal there. We've seen stick figures. Some, they were just because of the way something was reflecting back, which you can pick out pretty quick. But other ones, it was this Smith house, is the one I was telling you about, the Catholic priest going in.
Right.
They kept on saying that when they're trying to sleep, someone was jumping up and down the bed. We've got a stick figure, looked like a small child, holding on to the bedpost, jumping up and down. Then we got a bigger spirit that sat there. We asked it to move its left leg. The little stick figure moved its left leg.
Huh.
When I went to stick a geophone on the bed, the thing moved completely over. So that was kind of cool. And then Boo Buddy. That's that little teddy bear with all the devices in it to detect EMF and motion and heat.
Right.
What I usually do is I tape a wrist recorder on its foot and let it go through its questions that it asks. And I get all kinds of comment. That's some of the most active EVPs I get is off of that thing.
Nice.
But as far as material evidence, I think we do that just to convince the client, because people who are skeptics, I mean, you could have the thing walk up and talk to them itself, and they're not going to believe you.
There's never enough evidence for the skeptic.
Nope, never. But yeah, the SLS cameras was pretty neat. And on the Ovilus, I've had stuff where, it has its own internal dictionary. I looked at all the 2,000 words supposedly it has. In one of our investigations, we got some words coming out of it that wasn't in the dictionary. And they were valid words. They were from some international language that they were trying to do in the 1800s.
Right.
This house was a boarding house in the 1800s. So some cross going through there probably used one of those words. And, it's hard to explain. You getting a word that's not in the dictionary. So things like that, just pique your interest and you keep using the equipment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime you get validation through your equipment, it's always a good feeling, regardless. So that's awesome. I mean, one of my favorite is still the classic EVP. I'm always in love with the EVPs. I think they're so pure in that sense versus like Spirit Box. I always, for some reason, get a little leery on some of the technology, but still, my favorite though is definitely EVP. Now, one thing I definitely like to. Oh, let me just also, there was a question directed for you, Bob, from chat. It's from BRRS Media, aka Rich, Big Rich. So he says, has Bob ever encountered a greater demon? If so, how did it end?
If I had, it would have ended badly. Now, when I went to Bobby Mackey's, they keep on saying there's a demon there. And that's questionable. I think that's a lot of hype. At least I thought it was. I went there perfectly healthy. I had an annual physical, nothing wrong. The day I left there, coming back home, I got deathly ill. For 2 weeks, I lost 30 pounds because I couldn't hold down food. Went to emergency room, had to have emergency surgery. My stomach was up in my chest and it was twisted shut.
Oh my God.
Now it seemed to me, and they said, well, they don't know how I ever survived that long. Well, they would have caught that in the annual physical. So then I was wondering, is it a coincidence that I went there and all of a sudden, since I had some small hernia to begin with, did the demon take advantage of that and try to snuff me?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's very possible.
So, I mean, usually, if a spirit is a total butthole in real life, when they become a spirit, they're still a total butthole. So, I mean, I've experienced negative things, but there's not much they can do about it if you're not afraid of them. They thrive off the fear.
Okay.
So,
Now,
as far as full out demon, no.
okay. Yeah, I mean, even in my experience, I wouldn't say that we came across like full on demonic cases. So, but you know, we've definitely had some, you know, negative entities or dark shadows, things like that. Okay, so another question. This is kind of a fun question. This is something I like to ask all my guests. So, my fun question is if you can pick anywhere, any moment in time in the past, okay, and you could visit there for one day as like a ghost, what would it be and why?
That one takes some deep thought. That ain't no fun. It would probably be.
No pressure.
It would probably be England. It'd probably be England during one of the blitzkriegs. Strangely enough, I've always been drawn to World War II music. I'm named after an uncle that died the day before the armistice was signed. My other uncle was at Normandy Beach and went from a private to a staff sergeant in 30 minutes. And just that era, I'm always drawn to it. Of course, I might have been around in that era. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in reincarnation.
Okay.
In fact, I'm getting ready to do another article about that for the minute.
Well, you need to check out my theories on.
When some of that.
So you need to check out my theories on reincarnation. I put in my book. I've got a pretty good take. I'm not a believer in soul reincarnation, but I have a different take on that. So you might have to check that out. I don't want to go. That's a whole nother topic that we can definitely get into.
Well, I'll have to wait till next year to buy your book.
Oh, it's out now.
No, I spent my money on it. Yeah, I could do that, or I can get out to Amazon and get it. Right?
You can go to Amazon and get my book.
But yeah, but about the reincarnation, my daughter, when she wasn't old enough to speak, she was terrified of flames. You know, she just didn't want to be around them. We had to hide. I used to smoke back then, so I'd have to hide the light in the lighter. When she was old enough to put words together, she'd look at me and say, "You're not my mommy and daddy. I died in the fire." I mean, she was obsessed with that. We went past a house that was burnt once, and she said, "Look, that's like the house I died in." Freaked out the wife at the time.
Right.
And she says, "What is wrong with her?" I said, "She's remembering something she shouldn't." I says, a lot of young kids, if you ask them who they were before who they are now, you might get an answer you don't like.
Oh yeah, it's the most common occurrence is from the ages of 2 to 5. Once they start after 5 years old, once they start school, then typically they have trouble going back to previous life memories and things like that. But yeah, 2 to 5. That's the prime age for about asking kids about their past.
And the daughter doesn't remember it, but the grandson, when I went and seen him between 2 to 5, she says, "Don't you dare ask him anything."
Oh yeah, that's
why I'm saving all my books. So.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so as we kind of wrap up near the end of the show, I can't believe we're approaching that hour mark soon. So as we near toward the end of the show, what would you like folks to know about yourself? What do you got coming up with either your team, yourself? What do you got coming up in the future?
Well, as soon as we get done with this show, I got to call the client we had by Haley, Mississippi. He says, "We got another haunting and we need to talk to you about it." So as soon as I'm off the show, I'm going to call him and make an arrangement to go there. One of our potential new members to our team, he's got something I'm supposed to go to on Monday, and they don't want anybody to know about it, so we're supposed to come, in the dark of the night so nobody sees us there.
Uh-huh.
So I got a mixture of stuff going.
Oh, nice.
And as far as knowing about me, I pretty like staying in the background. You know,
Good.
I might have been the co-founders. I might have been in charge of pretty much everything, but I just let everybody else take credit if the credit's due.
Well, I mean, I
But
gotta
anyway,
say,
that's about it.
Bob, I really appreciate you being on the show tonight. I love hearing you talk about your experiences. Hopefully, we'll be able to have you back on in the future to where we can maybe even dive into some of your UFO stuff. Certainly, I like to tackle different topics, and we're certainly going to
Oh
cover
yeah,
things like UFOs. We have done some alien stuff in the future. I try to separate aliens and UFOs. I do think there sometimes can almost be separate. But for sure, I'd love to have you back on. It's been great to hear you talk about everything. But other than that, let's see. Let me check the chat, see if we got anything else. Looks like we got one more question so far from William Bennett. He says, does he consult with different spiritual groups on how to go about investigation, or does he like to keep it strictly scientific?
I pretty much lean towards the scientific, but trying to find a legitimate spiritual person or medium is far and few between. And sometimes they can throw off your information. They can skew it one way or the other. I've gotten to the point now where if I go into a place, I can sense whether it's negative or positive. One of the people, he told you I went to church once with this Wiccan girl. I really didn't want to go to the spiritualist church. It's just that she was hot. And she was going there, and by God, I was going with her. But when, that's in your 20s. But this little blue-haired lady says you have latent psychic abilities, and I could teach you how to develop them. I'm 20. I don't want to do that.
Right.
What the heck was the matter with her? What was she thinking? But but a friend of mine now that is a medium out on the West Coast, Karen Fraser, I don't know if you're familiar with who she is. She's written several books. But she said the more you do these investigations, the more those abilities are going to start picking back up again. So I'm at the point now where I can go in and kind of sense what's going on. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a nice medium out there. But it's hard to, like I said, they're hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's true. We just recently met Dr. Caudell. She's a psychic medium here. I haven't had a chance to work with her on a professional level. We did interview. She was on a show with us, and of course, I actually have an event at her. She owns a haunted mansion, which they're doing a Halloween stuff there, and so I've got a live event on location there tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, I met her. We don't really know, her level or how good she is or whatnot. We've heard some good things. But in the past, trying to work with other psychics or psychic mediums, you're right. It is hard to find that somebody in between or just find somebody that's decent enough, to work with.
There's only so many chip coffees out there, right?
Oh yeah,
Kim Russo's.
Right now, you met Chip Coffee, right?
Well, no, you met one of our team members. I've met. Well, this is UFO related, but I met Hans Holzer way back when he was really into the paranormal at that spiritualist church I'm talking about. I've met Bud Hopkins from the UFO groups, Dr. David Jessup. One time we sat for till 3 in the morning on the floor discussing the alien agenda. So I was involved with that for a while. I've been kind of all over the place paranormally over the years. Heck, I'm old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look,
So
but that's a good thing that you have that all over the place, because I mean, you almost have to sometimes so you can get a good idea of some things. If you if you just get that tunnel vision though, it's hard to see the big picture. It really is. That's one of the things I've been trying to really preach about is the big picture.
Yep. Now, somebody asked me, one of the other talk shows I was on once, you know, why do you just deal with the ghost and not some of the other stuff? I says, well, number one, I don't like the thought of being probed isn't my, bucket list. So I stay away from the alien stuff now. I don't want to be ripped to shreds, from the Bigfoot. So I stay out of the cryptid end.
Right.
I said, there's not too much a ghost can do to you. So I'll stay in that field first if I can.
Right. Now, also we had a question from Big Rich who says, how does Bob feel about remote viewing to prove their psychic prowess?
I think it's just real. I didn't bother to mention him. I'm also a Reiki master. So taking energy and transmitting it through space, basically, instantaneously somewhere else, that's a given for Reiki practitioners. So remote viewing isn't much different. I'm sure a lot of the stuff that was remote viewed, the government never did give us the great details on.
Right.
But yeah, I believe in it.
Yeah, I know they had the remote viewing. The CIA had the program with the remote viewing. Yep. So, certainly there's. I definitely believe that there's truth to it because I do believe in that metaphysical energy. I'm very much into energy on like the spiritual realm and things like that. I mean, that's why we use all these instruments that EMF detectors and all these things. It's on an energy level, and then we seem to be able to pick up paranormal activity on an energy level. So when it comes to energies, I don't want to say energy again, yep. But when it comes to that, I definitely believe, and especially that metaphysical level as well. So yeah, psychics, crystals, things like that. I am a believer in those things.
Well, that's one of the reasons I tell people to stay away from Ouija boards. There's contention there from some investigators that say it's just a tool like any of our other tools. And I say there's a big difference. These other tools, the entities interacting with the other tools, you use a Ouija board, it's going through you, and you have no idea. I says it's like letting a hacker get in your computer.
Right. Right.
You really don't need that to avoid it.
And the funny little story is that my wife saved some girl from getting a Ouija board just recently. She was picking it up and she was going to buy it, and my wife's like, listen, and she explained to her that you're using yourself as the conduit, and that versus something else like a voice recorder or something for EVPs. But once she explained it to that girl, it was like she put it back and was like, I mean, but people don't realize that about Ouija board. It's just a communication tool. It's the same as anything else. No, it's not. No, it's not. There is a little bit of a difference. Now, I See You See Me, she was wondering if our pets try to communicate with us after they pass on. What's your feeling on pets in the afterlife?
I had a dog of 15 years. In fact, I went through a bottle of rum after it died because I felt bad. I was the one that put it to sleep. It's kind of ironic that usually if you have a pet and you live long enough, you're the one that orders it to be murdered. I guess putting it to sleep's a politer way of doing it, but they used to poke me in the leg to get his attention. Well, about a week after I buried him out in the backyard, I made a casket. It was $300 of the wood. It looked like a real casket. Little pillow inside, some of his favorite toys. Well, about a week after he died, I got poked in the leg sitting out here tending to my raccoons.
Huh.
So yeah, they can let you know. Sometimes I think they come back in spirit to another animal, because we've got a new one here that just showed up last week, and it acts like he used to.
Huh.
Same mannerisms.
Yeah, and
so yeah, there's a whole world out there.
Oh yeah, in the world of paranormal, I think pets are something that I don't put a lot of thought into, but yeah, I do think that there is some times when you see some of that like you said, that sort of evidence of a particular soul of an animal that tends to come back and communicate as well. Also, we have Debbie Fountain says, does Bob find that this time of year, because of course the thinning of the veil, right? That's what everybody talks about. But do you find that this time of year is more active?
Nope. You usually get the same amount of stuff. I don't think the spirits experience seasons like we do. Supposedly it's a thing of the veil, but the veil's been getting thin over a long, long period of time. Most of us go through life just totally blind and oblivious to what's out there. One of the things a lot of skeptics, and we was going to discuss once, how the reactions that I get from people when they find out I do this, it's oh cool, or it's all BS.
Right.
And one of my answers usually is based on what? They can't give me an answer because they are not basing on anything. That's just some things locked in their mind, and there are people you can't convince anyhow. So I don't waste my time with them. But yeah, it's like what you see when you experience what the visual spectrum is, from X-ray to ultraviolet, and all we can see is like about 5% in the middle. So basically, we're 95% missing everything that's around us. Same thing happens with the spirits. And this time of year, I don't think it makes much of a difference than any other time. It's just more and more people are getting elevated spiritually, are starting to look at that more often.
Yeah.
And they're awakening to there's a world out there that it's part of, that we can't see it.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, and I think that to expand on that too as well, I think, when, I'm not fully convinced that, yes, that the thinning of the veil, I don't know, because, yes, more people seem to be conscious of ghosts and ghouls and all that because of Halloween and things like that. But when you're doing investigations on a year round, you're right. It almost seems as if the paranormal activity doesn't seem to increase, or it always seems to be there, and now that you brought that up, I never really thought about it, I guess, but looking back, I don't think I've really noticed a difference before when we were doing investigations on a regular basis.
Yeah, there's differences based on the different changes in the moon. What part is it? A full moon? Is it a new moon? I mean, there's differences like that. There's differences where there's storms not going on, that electrical energy. That stuff makes a difference.
Yeah.
But because somebody arbitrarily picked October 31st or whatever Halloween is, I don't pay attention. But somebody arbitrarily picked that, and you just surmise or stereotype, well, there should be more activity because I see things that's dressed up like a spirit. Nah, I don't buy it.
Well, a lot of it goes back to the Celts, and I think, and even maybe Druids and stuff, some of the early, a few thousand years ago. But now I do think that at that time, it would make sense for them to feel like that. It would make sense for them to feel that way because when they go into the fall time, and then when they would have their Samhain festival, you got to figure, like, to them, they're seeing all of this life, and even for us as humans, we experience in spring and all that. We got the green, everything's so alive, spring, summer, and all that. And then as we get in the fall, everything goes dormant or goes dead. The leaves fall off the trees, and so it can be like that living to dead transition visually for us as humans. So certainly subconscious, we're going to feel that way about spiritual activity as well. So that's just a little bit of psychological take on my side of things. Let's see. BRS Media says, my thoughts on the veil is more energy is focused toward the paranormal, so more people have a chance or at a glimpse or experience because of the frequencies are bumped up. So I guess what I think what Big Rich is saying is that collectively as a whole, since people are more conscious of this time of year, is it possible that we're putting more metaphysical energy out there for spirits to utilize?
Creating tulpas.
Right. So what do you think about that?
It could be. They did that experiment with a bunch of people that created a paranormal being just based on they're constantly focusing on that it really existed. part of the metaphysical, it explains to you that most things that happen to you or around you is based on intent. So if you really believe something's going to happen or you really want it to happen, based on that intent, if it's positive, you'll get it granted to you.
Right.
Like, wealth, whatever it might be, happiness, health, it's your intent that makes a big, big difference. Same with Reiki. It's the power of intent. So if everybody's focusing on that, that might be the case.
Yeah. And
good point of view.
I would say that would probably, in that line of thinking, would be more poltergeist-related activity then. If it's something created from us metaphysically, then that tends to lend itself more toward poltergeist. So maybe you'll see a rise in poltergeist activity versus actual paranormal.
Well, I hope.
Go ahead, Bob.
I hope I don't see any of it.
Yeah, right? I mean...
Yeah, the paranormal stuff scares the crap out of me.
Haunted houses scare me. Paranormal doesn't quite scare me, but I think for me, and I think a lot, and I don't want to talk for you as well, Bob, but I do think that helping people is such a huge part of this, and that's why I started the show. That's why we tried to get information out to people. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing. It's not always going out and thrill seeking and seeing the paranormal, because you're right that some of that can be pretty scary to witness, but I think the reward is to help people ultimately, and
absolutely, if they need the help. We had one client, she was a firefighter, and her kid was starting to growl and said when they wanted to kill the parents, he tried to stab his brother in the eye with a pencil. We went and investigated. She mentioned in passing she used a Ouija board and was trying to do dark spells, which would have been nice for her to tell us before we went there.
Yeah.
So we got it straightened out for her, got the house cleaned. She called about 2 weeks later saying, well, we got the activity back. And she said, could it have been because I used the Ouija board again? We didn't go back. Some people you just don't help.
Yeah. I mean, now, there was a question I had earlier that I wanted to ask you when you were talking about working with some of like the Catholic priests and the Mormons and things. Have you noticed? Has I guess what I'm trying to say is, have you noticed something in connection with their faith? Have they had to have strong faith to be able to help you?
Yeah, I think so, because the protection you're asking for is based on your faith that these things exist. So if you call the Archangel Michael, come take away a negative spirit, if you don't really believe that he exists, that spirit ain't going anywhere.
Right.
One of the articles I wrote once too, a priest will come in and exorcise a house, and 2 weeks later, the activity's still there. It's like, how could that be? He was using the power of God to run the spirit out of there. What did he do? Ignore God? I don't think that happens. One of my theories was well, maybe that spirit is there because God wanted it there to teach a lesson to the person that's experiencing the problems. So sometimes God puts things in front of us as learning experiences. So sometimes those prayers to get rid of something like that just flat ain't going to work because God's overrode what you're trying to do.
And that could be. Sometimes I also wonder if it's their faith. I've run into numerous situations with trying to deal with certain members of the church that didn't seem to fully, I don't know if they just didn't fully believe or, if they were in it for the wrong reasons. But for me and my experiences, it seemed to be sometimes a question of faith in some of those situations. So I was just curious to see if you had that similar experience or what you thought about that. But that is a good point about God overruling some of those things.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got the power to do it. He pretty much has the last word and everything. But yeah, if we're put on this earth to learn lessons in the material world, how to exist, even though supposedly we're all one giant soul that's attached to God, but because our egos were separate, if he's put us down here to learn certain things, to realize that that's what's important is the soul of that person, not what they look like, not how much they make, not what their viewpoints in life is, but what that spirit's supposed to be learning. Sometimes you're set up to suffer, or you might be coming back here suffering to have somebody else learn what compassion is. So there's, like I said, the metaphysical is the soul-oriented type thoughts, which gives me headaches sometimes, but it's important.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Bob, I really appreciate you coming on here. It's been a great time. We've had, believe it or not, I think we've had a record number of questions for our guests tonight. So people must love you out there, Bob. That's a good thing.
Number?
Yeah, I think so. People must really like you out there, Bob.
Wow. When I used to listen to live podcasts, I'd bury them with questions because I always wanted to learn something new from somebody else that had the same amount of experiences. So I guess that's good.
Yes.
Considering I usually don't like to talk publicly, and the thought of being on a show where they actually could see who I was, it wasn't exactly my idea of having a good time, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll talk about UFOs next time.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I said, guys, I will have links for Spectral Tech down below later on. And also, I believe you have a Facebook group too, right? Do you have a Facebook page?
We have one of our members. That has a Facebook paranormal investigation page. One of the older members that we kind of booted out. She's got a Facebook page, and hers just shows cartoons of ghosts. She wasn't exactly a really engaged member, but yeah, we got a paranormal investigation page. That's from one of our members, and then our website is spectraltech.org.
Yeah,
that's where we've got EVPs. We've got some evidence pages. We've got all the articles I've written. So if somebody wants to download some of the stuff that goes on around our area, like one I always thought was ironic, it was Covington Liquor. I was going to the liquor store to hunt for spirits. Needless to say, I found them. But yeah, they can go out to the webpage and learn about who our people are and what we do.
Awesome. Yeah, and like I said, and I'll also have that link down below for the spectraltech.org a little later. So again, thank you to everybody that showed up in the chat tonight. And again, thank you so much for my very special guest tonight, Bob Fountain. And again, also, Bob, I wanted to say thank you for your service. I wanted to make sure I let you know that before we ended tonight also. So, guys, remember, seek the truth. Good night.